The one word which encapsulates their common characteristic and which is at the basis of their sharing is that they are all believers. We read, all the believers were one in heart and mind. Believers is the first term that is used to describe the followers of Jesus. Only later they became known as Christians. Believe or belief is one of the most common words of the New Testament. So here, in the first few weeks after the resurrection, the one word that best describes them is that they are believers. This is not just a title for them, but a word which designates who they are and a word which guides their behavior. Let us look at this key word, believe, for it encapsulates who they are and how they conduct themselves. Interestingly, there is only one definition of belief or faith, same word in Greek, in the New Testament. Only one definition of it. And it's found in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. And perhaps this verse is familiar to you. It reads, faith or belief is the assurance of what is hoped for and the conviction of what is not seen. Let me read it again. Believing is the assurance of what is hoped for and the conviction of what is not seen. Assurance is to hold something to be true, and that which they hold true is something not seen but hoped for. And so the question is, what is it that they do not see but hold to be true? For that object is what transforms their lives into becoming the community that we have read about. We read, with great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of Jesus. It was with great power that the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of Jesus. What they do not see, but what they hold to be true, is that Jesus is resurrected. He rose from the dead. And it is about the resurrection of Jesus that the apostles continued to testify with great power. The important thing to the apostles was not the practicalities of the resurrection, but the unshakable reality of that event. If we look for the practicalities of the resurrection, we do end up somewhat confused. Sometimes the resurrected Jesus is described in physical terms. He tells his disciples to come forward and touch him, to put their hands where his wounds are and to feel them. And he says, give me a piece of fish so that I can eat it in front of you. At other times, they think he's a ghost, for he appears through closed doors, and then he disappears and reappears elsewhere. What they do know, however, is that they have met the risen Jesus. They cannot grasp, examine, measure, or analyze how it has happened, but they know that it is true. Nor is the resurrection the result of wishful thinking on their part, that they so wanted Jesus to rise from the dead that they were able to convince themselves that whatever they saw, they said, that must be Jesus risen. Now he is. No, not at all. The resurrection took the disciples by surprise. They weren't expecting it. Luke records in his gospel that when the woman came back from the tomb and told the disciples that the tomb was empty and that Jesus had risen, Luke says the disciples thought the women were talking nonsense, and they had to run to the tomb to verify for themselves if it was true. As we read through the various resurrection accounts, we realize that the resurrected Jesus only appeared to his disciples and a few other people only. Thus, the majority of the people that we read about forming this new community were not part of this new community because they too had seen the risen Jesus. No, they were there because they believed the testimony of the apostles. And so, getting back to the definition of belief or faith in the resurrection, this early community carried in them the conviction of what they had not seen and the assurance of what they hoped for. That is, the ongoing presence of Jesus with them. He had not left them behind. That is what transformed them to become the caring and sharing community described in the passage that was read for us. Their belief in the presence of the risen Christ with them changed their view about themselves as now being people for whom Jesus had given his life. And it changed their view about other people, for Jesus had equally given his life for them too. In other words, they saw themselves and others through the eyes of Jesus.